Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today I bring you Dave Kerpen.
Ever since I finished my career as a Division I All-American athlete, I longed for not only the clarity of purpose that I had as an athlete, but also the accountability that comes with aspiring for big goals with a team of like-minded people. Then I discovered Mastermind groups. Masterminds are small groups of like-minded people who get together either in person or over Skype or just over the phone to provide support, feedback, and advice to other members of the group. So I dove in and I learned all I could about mastermind groups, and then I finally launched my own. And the change was instant. I regained the accountability of being part of a group of like-minded, hardworking individuals who hold me to a higher standard. My mastermind group helps me get feedback and advice and even validation when I'm making big decisions in my life. And I have clarity and focus and accountability again, just like when I was an athlete. I've now facilitated dozens of high performers in mastermind groups. I'm talking Olympians and MBAs and neurosurgeons and professional athletes and entrepreneurs and lots of others. I've taken everything you need to know to start your own mastermind group, and I've put it into a short 10-page ebook titled The Quick and Easy Guide to Starting Your Own Mastermind Group in 30 Days or Less. Grab a copy of this free ebook by going to jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. That's jimharshawjr.com/mastermind.
Dave is a New York Times bestselling author of 3 books. He's an international keynote speaker and the #1 LinkedIn influencer of all time, which is crazy, all time in terms of page views. He's the head of Bill Gates, Jack Welch, Mark Cuban, and Barack Obama. Dave has been named one of Entrepreneur's top 10 up-and-coming leaders and has been featured on CNBC, BBC, ABC World News Tonight, the CBS Early Show, the New York Times. He's also keynoted at dozens of conferences around the world in places like Singapore, Athens, Dubai, San Francisco, Mexico City, and lots of other places. And among other things, we're going to talk today about his latest New York Times bestselling book, The Art of People. Now, if you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, or if you hear something you like, make sure you download your free copy of the action plan in PDF form. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. That's jimharshawjr.com/action. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
So Dave, tell us a little bit about your background. Where'd you grow up, and how did you get to what you're doing now?
Well, it's a long story. I'll try to keep it relatively quickly, I guess. I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn, went to public school, got a full scholarship, merit scholarship to Boston U, and I was studying elementary education, fell in love with sales while as a student I became a ballpark vendor and worked at Fenway Park in the Boston Garden. And you only get paid based on what you sell in the ballpark vending business. So I ended up having to develop a whole shtick in order to sell product. And so I became what was known throughout the Boston area as the Crunch and Munch guy throughout college, and sold a heck of a lot of Crunch and Munch and made a heck of a lot of money as a college student, and really fell in love with sales and marketing. And then I guess fast forward several years later, didn't have enough money to have a traditional wedding, but I wanted a very large wedding. And so both my fiance at the time and I had a very strong sales and marketing background, and we had an idea to create a sponsored wedding promotion and get married at a baseball game. And we pitched the Brooklyn Cyclones, a minor league affiliate of the Mets, and ended up raising $100,000 to create a pretty awesome sponsored wedding event called Our Field of Dreams. $20,000 for charity. And the event was so awesome that our vendors got such great press that they said, this was great. What are you guys going to do next? And we couldn't get married again. So we started a business instead, and that was our first business. And I guess 3 businesses and the most important 3 kids later, here I am.
Wow. So how do you get sponsors for a wedding?
Well, we created a promotion. So just like in between innings, there are various vendors, Coca-Cola, whomever, throwing out T-shirts and doing all sorts of funny stunts as promotions. We pitched our wedding partners on similar promotions. So everyone got bobbleheads, bridegroom bobbleheads that were sponsored, and then instead of throwing out T-shirts, 1-800-Flowers.com sponsored throwing out of flower bouquets in between innings, and there was an official drink of the night sponsored by Smirnoff, and there was a toilet paper wedding dress kind of contest to give away a wedding dress, and so on and so forth. And we were able to really provide a lot of value to our wedding vendors. They didn't sponsor it because they liked us. They sponsored it because they knew they would get a lot of value out of it. And that's really why it worked so well. Yeah.
So you thought creatively, you thought outside of the box. You didn't do it the way that I don't think anybody's ever probably done a wedding quite like that before. You would know more than I would. And you found a different way to go about something and made it work, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was really my entree into entrepreneurship. But ultimately, it's really about entrepreneurial thinking. It's about, to your point, creativity, problem solving, thinking out of the box, and persistence to get something done.
So one thing I want to talk about, sales. You talked about you got into sales. You went from elementary education into sales because you were the crunch and munch guy, right? And I find it fascinating that most people can't stand salespeople. But what I tell them is what you can't stand is bad salespeople, because you don't know what a good salesperson looks like or sounds like or feels like, because you don't know they're selling you something. They're bringing you value. They're approaching it in a different way, and there's a good salesperson and a bad salesperson. They're completely different, and I think it's a lot around people skills, right? Your latest New York Times bestselling book is The Art of People. It's been compared to my favorite book of all time, which is widely considered one of the most influential nonfiction books ever written, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People, written by Dale Carnegie back in 1936. So what kind of light does your book shed on dealing with people, especially for in sales or anything else for that matter?
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head with respect to how people see salespeople, and there are a lot of bad salespeople out there, and there are some good salespeople out there. But ultimately, I guess I would make the case that we're all salespeople, to the extent that we all need to convince people of things and to get people to buy things from us, even if we're not traditional salespeople. Anytime you ask a girl out or a guy on a date, you are selling them, and anytime you have an idea for something, you need to sell people on that idea. Even if you're not a salesperson by trade or an entrepreneur by trade, you have to sell ideas all the time. So I think we all need to become better salespeople than we are today. And that does come down to people skills and getting people to know, like, and trust you. And so The Art of People addresses that and goes through a wide variety of skills. And I can't share all of them, but I'll say that I start with listening in all 3 of my books, and one of the big themes of Art of People is becoming a better listener. And most bad salespeople are poor listeners. They like to talk and hear themselves talk, but they're poor listeners. And most great salespeople are wonderful listeners and really know the importance of asking questions and shutting up and letting people feel heard in a world where most people don't really know how to listen. They're simply waiting to talk. And I also talk a lot about the importance of a very, very positive attitude. A positive attitude, high energy, enthusiasm is contagious, and people want to be around you. And a negative attitude is also contagious. And so I write a lot about not only the importance of having a positive attitude, but how to maintain that positive attitude even in the face of challenges, which obviously we all face challenges day after day, week after week. And we're not always all in a perfect mood, but if you're going to be a salesperson, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be successful, frankly, in life, I think you have to figure out a way to get in that positive mindset every single day.
So in terms of listening, and we've heard that before, right? Everybody's heard you've got to be a good listener. But if I'm listening, how can I tell you about whatever I'm trying to sell you? That's, I think, what most people get stuck with. They say, well, if I'm listening, how do I sell them? How do I tell them about all these benefits and features and bells and whistles? Or if I'm a coach, how do I tell, if I'm listening to my athlete, how do I tell him or her how to perform whatever technique I'm trying to teach them? Or if I'm trying to sell my wife or my kids on something, why should I listen? Or how do I listen when I need to be telling them and explaining to them?
The basic premise that The Art of People suggests, and that I really truly believe in, and I've learned this from years of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global network of CEOs, wonderful organization founded by my friend and mentor and investor, Vern Harnish, is that people really don't want advice. Pretty much ever. Even when they ask for advice, they don't actually want advice. What they want is to feel heard. What they want is to feel listened to. And so the answer, maybe I'm cheating. Hopefully I'm actually giving you an answer, Jim. But the answer that I have is, don't try to sell them on the benefits. Just try to listen and help them feel heard. And I think you'll find the magic happens when they feel heard. Because when they feel heard, now they want to know what you've got. They're asking you to tell them. They're asking you for help. When they don't feel heard, their defenses are up, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear about your bells and your whistles and whatever it is that you're trying to sell them or give them advice about. But when they feel truly heard, when they feel truly listened to, when you can go in without an agenda to sell them anything, but with the only agenda being, how can I help this person feel heard and validated and understood? That's when the magic happens, and when you can actually end up selling them. It's a bit of an ironic truth, but it is absolutely a truth. It's certainly the truth that I have experienced in my life.
And I'll add to that. One thing that I find interesting is when you listen, you end up finding out what their biggest pain points are. And those are the ones that when it does come time for you to speak, you don't need to talk about the 15 bells and whistles. You need to talk about the 3 that are most relevant, and sort of address, use the same words and address exactly what their pain points are. And that comes down to them feeling heard, and they feel like they're being cared for, and that you're actually listening to them.
That's right. And, the other thing is that maybe whatever you have to sell to them isn't a good fit or good timing.
Yeah.
But if you listen, A, you may know that, and B, you may get an even more valuable outcome. So, maybe, the answer is, this isn't for me, but I actually know not one but 2 people that this is for. And let me introduce you to each of these people, because you've been a great person and you've heard me out, you've listened to me, and I can tell you care about me. Yeah. You're never going to get that if you go in guns a-blazing trying to sell something. What you're going to get if you do that is, this is not a fit for me, actually. So the way to actually win is to see if it is a fit by listening really well, finding the right pain points, as you suggested, and if it is a great fit, then bringing those pain points to the center of attention and selling against those pain points. And if it's not a good fit, saying, actually, I'm not going to try to sell you something, but maybe based on what I tell you, maybe you can tell me the names of a couple people for whom this is a good fit. And I've actually gotten quite a bit of business that way in my career.
Yeah. And so what are some others? You mentioned, well, actually, let me dive into the other one that you mentioned about positivity and that being contagious. How do you stay true to who you really are, but still really be as positive and energetic as you can be? And certainly there's some days and some weeks and some moments and some seasons of our life where, and maybe even some products, right, that we want to sell, that we are selling, or ideas that we're selling that we're more energetic and positive about. I mean, any tactics on how we can best find that positive part of ourselves and express it?
Sure. First, for any of the doubters out there, let me share actually some of the science behind it. Turns out we all have mirror neurons that actually mirror the attitude of the person that is speaking to us. So if you're in a good mood, you literally are going to help to create a good mood in the person that you're speaking to. And conversely, if you're in a bad mood, you're going to create a bad mood. And obviously, it's way, way easier to sell somebody that is also in a good mood. If you can help to influence that, then that's huge. The two hacks that I have for getting a good mood when you're not already in a good mood are frankly quite simple and yet just too often overlooked. The first is acts of kindness. So I'll tell you a little story. I was having a really crappy day. I think I lost like $100,000 client in the morning, and I had to take a train into Washington D.C. from New York to have this big pitch, and the train was running late, and I was in a horrible mood, and I got down to Washington, and I tried to solve my bad mood with food, as many people do, and I looked up. I'm a big sushi fan. I looked up sushi restaurants, and I found the best sushi restaurant in Washington. I was walking to the sushi restaurant, and it was kind of a long walk. It was almost a mile, but I figured, let me get some exercise. And unfortunately, it was a hot day, and I found myself sweating a little bit. So now here I am, like really bad mood, starting to sweat, which can be a total disaster, of course, in sales. And I finally get to the restaurant, and of course, I see a big closed sign. This was like just a miserable moment, and I was pretty much out of time. I had to grab a really quick bite to eat somewhere else, and then headed over to my meeting. And on the way, I saw a homeless person, and often I skip homeless people begging on the streets because I prefer to give through organizations. But I just thought, all right, let me give him something. So I had that moment where I reached into my pocket to give him my change, and he comes over kind of excited. And then I had the embarrassing moment where I realized I didn't have any change. So rather than kind of screwing him over and sort of lying and saying, I'll get you later, I said, all right, I'll reach into my wallet and give him $1. Well, reach into the wallet. Of course, I don't have any small bills. So there I am with that same challenge. And the only thing I had was $20 bills. So you know what? I said, you know what? Fine, whatever. I gave him a $20 bill. And, honestly, Jim, you would have thought this guy won the lottery. The way he reacted, it was just unbelievable, jumping up and down, screaming, cheering, thanking me, asking me if he could hug me, thanking Jesus. I mean, it was just an unbelievable moment. And the crazy thing was that it completely transformed my mood as well. And I ended up just in an unbelievable space and went on to my pitch and had a successful pitch. And, for me, that taught me the value of acts of kindness. And so now I use acts of kindness to get into a better mood. If I'm having a tough day, I go downstairs and I hold the door open for the next 10 people to come into my office building, or I find a homeless person to give a couple dollars to, or if I'm in a really bad mood, I call my mother-in-law. I'll do these sorts of things to take myself out of
Go to drastic measures.
Exactly. And focus on others. And the other hack when I'm not in a good mood that I use is gratitude. I write a thank you card. I make a list of things and people that I'm grateful for. In 2 minutes, I say, see how long a list I can write. I order a thank you gift for somebody that I care about. And it's amazing how powerful both acts of kindness and gratitude are in transforming my mood, taking the pressure off whatever it is that's bringing me down and just focusing on all the amazing things that this world has to offer, and just really putting my own stupid issue into perspective. And it's been totally transformative for me.
Yeah, I believe it. Those are great. Do you have any others? Maybe one more that you could share from the book? I know in the book you talk about 11 simple people skills and 53 easy to execute tips. Can you give us maybe one more?
Sure. I'll give you another one that's super tactical for salespeople. I have a chapter about always taking the water. So by the way, it's more than 11 skills. It's really 11 categories and about 53 skills. So when I say always take the water, it's one of 53, not one of 11. But I learned, in my career, I had a very unfortunate, I mentioned sweating earlier. I had a very unfortunate incident where I was running late to a meeting, a sales pitch, and I was sweating, and I arrived, and the woman asked me, do you want some water? And I felt really bad because I was running late already. So I said, no, thanks. And I went into the pitch and I just blew it. I was just a total sweaty, disgusting mess. 30 minutes later, I had completely messed up the pitch and sort of walked out of there really embarrassed and, head down in shame, feeling like quite a failure. So I ended up deciding to run an experiment. And over the next 20 sales pitches, I took the water at 10 and I said no to the water at 10. And I actually found a much higher correlation with taking the water and closing the deal. And what I realized was, by taking the water when people offer you the water or coffee or whatever it is, it's not for you, it's for them. It's actually putting them at ease.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if somebody showed up at your house, if you were hosting friends and somebody showed up at your house and you said, hey, welcome, come on in, would you like some water? And they said, nah, I don't want anything, I'm good. You would feel like a pretty lousy host. You actually wouldn't feel good. So why, when we go to business meetings, do we feel like it's wrong to say yes and take that water? And we're so often feeling like we're putting the other person out, when the opposite is true. If we take the water, we're actually doing our prospects a favor, helping to put them at ease, helping them to feel like a good host, and it will actually help us convert that sale and make an even better impression.
That's interesting. That's something that's been kind of bubbling under the surface that I've thought about lately going into appointments. And I'm glad you kind of brought that to the surface and really made sense of it, because I have noticed that. I've noticed that whenever I offer somebody water or coffee and they accept, it just makes me feel much more comfortable with that person and much more, I don't know, it just makes you feel at some level closer to that person. So that's such a little thing, but I think it can be really powerful.
Yeah, totally works.
So let's shift gears a little bit, Dave. You've had a very successful career, 3-time New York #1 best-selling books, speaking at these conferences all over the world. And you started, just like so many of us, going to college for whatever it is that we thought we were going to go to college for, and having a summer job. And here you are, you're a highly sought after speaker and extremely successful author. Have you ever had a moment of failure? Have you ever had that moment where you've tried something, you've taken a risk, or maybe you didn't even take much of a risk, but you failed, and as a result, you had that sense of hopelessness or that overwhelming self-doubt that comes with failure? Can you share that moment with us and how you dealt with it?
Well, to be clear, I have moments of failure every single day. I mean, I definitely fail in one way or another every single day. And any day that I don't fail is a day that I'm not taking any chances and I'm not moving myself forward. So I think we're probably very, very aligned in our overall opinion towards failure and just seeing mistakes as opportunities to grow. I mean, I literally would say that I fail every single day, certainly every single week. But I would say the biggest failure of my life was, a personal one. When I was 23, I met a woman. I was working at Radio Disney. I was the #1 salesperson in the country, and this woman started working in my office, and she was very, very talented. She dropped me to #2, and we had so much in common, and I fell madly in love with her. There was just one problem. She was married already. So, I ended up trying to get her to leave her husband, and became pretty, infatuated with her, and also with the idea of her leaving her husband, and she wasn't able to. And it was extremely painful, the most painful experience of my life. And I ended up, forcing myself to let her go, and to let go of the desire to have her leave her husband for me. And I saw that as a tremendous failure, and I felt totally hopeless at the time, and like I would never meet someone and never meet somebody like that. And it took over a year of not talking to her to let go and to get over her. And it was really, really hard. And she ended up moving to New York we were living in Boston at the time. She moved to New York to focus on her marriage. And I did what anyone with unrequited love would do. I went on a reality TV show to find true love, Sexy Singles at a Luxury Resort, and me. And
did you really? You went on a reality show?
I did. It was called Paradise Hotels, a sleazy show on Fox years ago. And after the show, I was living in Los Angeles for
the listener, I will dig up something on YouTube and post that into the action plan.
Well, there you go. 22nd most outrageous moment in TV history was this character on the show, Tony, yelling at me. So you might want to use that. But I know several months after the show, and I hadn't talked to her in over a year, and I just, I had almost completely let her go, but I guess I hadn't completely let her go because I called her up and I said, hey, just wanted to say hello, see how you're doing. And she said, oh, it's good to hear from you. I'm actually going through a divorce right now. And I said, I'm so sorry to hear that, and did a nice little pump fist, yes, and ended up jumping on a plane and catching up with her in New York, and we ended up dating, and again, 12 years later, we are happily married with 3 kids and 3 businesses and 4 books. So it worked out very, very well. But it wasn't if it weren't for the perceived failure and the lesson and the really, really hard challenge of letting go of that which I could not control. That's the most important lesson in life, and it's one that we continue to learn all the time. But if it hadn't been for that lesson, who knows how things would have turned out.
Yeah, that's such an important lesson of focusing on what you can control, what's within your power, and focus on the process, not the outcome. And because you didn't have the outcome initially that you wanted, but eventually you did. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously it doesn't always work out that way, but
right.
Certainly the point is it never would have had a shot to work out that way if I hadn't experienced, the failure and the letting go and the hard work, the process, to your point. And so it's that serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. I believe very strongly in that, and applying that to, not only our personal life, but our career.
So, Dave, let's talk quickly about habits a little bit. I mean, talk about the process that makes people successful and that has made you successful. Any habits that you have, that you do, that you feel have set you apart and helped you achieve success to the level you've achieved right now?
Well, I think a lot of people do this, but I would say that I am, as you saw in scheduling this, I am absolutely a calendar Nazi. I mean, I don't use the word Nazi very as a Jewish person. I don't use that very easily. But I am extremely into my calendar and making sure that every minute of every day is accounted for and being used in the most important way possible. And if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't happen. And if it is in my calendar, it's going to happen. I'm going to get it done. And I use my calendar extremely efficiently, I would say. I believe in the power of writing and reading. I spend a lot of time writing and reading. I already talked about listening. I talked about thank you. I like to end every day sharing with my family. We have a habit in my family of going around the table. Everyone shares their favorite moment of the day and one person that they're grateful for at the table and one person that they're grateful for outside of the table. That's been a very important habit for me. Yeah, I would say those are the key ones.
That's great. Larry Hagner, who is the host of the Good Dad Project, he calls it relentless time management. And it sounds like you do a lot of the same things. So for the listener, we scheduled this interview no less than 7 months ago. So I think it was back in November when we actually scheduled this, and I just kind of said it. He said, "Hey, if you're willing to be patient, we can get you on the calendar." I found something on your calendar, we scheduled it, and so yeah, that's definitely relentless time management. And so, Dave, what can the listener do? They like to get some kind of actionable item something they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to really start moving towards their goals. Is there one action item that you recommend that they take moving forward?
I mean, there's so many. I'm very, very much in favor of action items. All 53 chapters of The Art of People have 3 fast action steps to take to help move you from theory to practical action. So, I guess, one thing, write a handwritten thank you card for somebody that's important to you, and mail it. And there's dozens of things I could think of, but I think that the art of the handwritten thank you card is just completely lost, and it differentiates you from your competition. The person that gets the thank you card really appreciates it, and most important, to my point earlier, it's going to actually put you in a better mood than you were before you wrote it.
Yeah, it's one of the thank you card is one of those things that it affects you, and you feel better for having expressed gratitude and properly expressed thanks, and it makes the other person feel great. So that's a great piece of advice. I was actually at a business meeting a while back where a sort of younger businessman had mentioned to a bunch of students that the handwritten thank you cards are sort of passé, and they're a thing of the past. And I was biting my tongue, but I couldn't disagree more. It's so important. It's one of those things that sets you apart. And I think there's just something about somebody pulling out a piece of paper, writing on it, putting it in an envelope, putting a stamp on it, writing the address on it, and mailing it that is very meaningful. So I love that as an action item, Dave. Appreciate that. Can you take a minute to promote yourself? Let the listener know a little bit where they can find you, follow you, etc.
Sure. I mean, rather than promote myself, I'll just say that one of my core values is responsiveness. And so I get thousands of messages every week through social media and email, and I respond to each and every one. So if you have a question or a thought, an idea, feel free to tweet me at Dave Kerpen. Frankly, I'm on every single social network at Dave Kerpen, my name, DaveKerpen, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. You can find our companies at Likeable. Just Google Likeable, where you can find our various companies from big businesses and small businesses. And of course, all my books are on Amazon, so feel free to check out my Amazon author page as well.
Absolutely. We'll do that. And for the listener, I will have a link to Dave's Amazon author page, as well as his website, his social media, all in the action plan. Go to jimharshawjr.com/action. Dave, thanks so much for making time to come on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jim, and have a super likable rest of your day.
Thank you. And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.